president has mentioned the increased possibility of buying LNG gas from the US. First time I recall is November in Budapest at the margin of the informal UCO at the time. I think it's one of the possibilities on the table that we're looking into.
It is now has to be seen in the context of the ongoing tariff situation as well.
Europe's energy security remains fragile more than 3 years after Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022. During the 2022-2023 crisis, U.S. liquefied natural gas helped Europe fill the supply gap left by Russian imports. But now that U.S. President Donald Trump has rocked relationships with Europe, established after World War II, and turned to energy as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations, businesses are wary that reliance on the United States has become another vulnerability. Major EU firms are reportedly now considering limited imports of Russian gas, a move unthinkable just a year ago. That would require another major policy shift given that Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 made the European Union pledge to end Russian energy imports by 2027. France, which produces large amounts of nuclear power, already has one of the most diversified energy supplies in Europe. Germany relied heavily on cheap Russian gas to help drive its manufacturing sector until the Ukraine war, and has fewer options. Germany once sourced 60% of its gas from Russia, mainly through the Nord Stream pipeline, blown up in 2022. Now Germany has fewer alternatives, with limited LNG infrastructure and delays in renewable energy deployment. Negotiations with top LNG exporter Qatar have stalled, limiting options for long-term energy security. While renewable energy use has grown, it's not expanding fast enough to meet immediate energy demands. Russia's gas share in the EU has already fallen from 40% pre-war to below 10% this year. Most of what remains is Russian LNG, supplied by Novatek rather than pipeline flows. USLN covered 16.7% of EU imports last year, but its role is increasingly tied to Trump's trade agenda. Trump wants Europe to reduce its trade surplus with the US, using gas deals as part of the negotiation toolkit.
Commissioner Jørgensen said last week that the Commission stands ready to facilitate the increased purchase of US energy. Can you specify specifically whether there are new initiatives in the pipeline and whether this could be part of, for example, the roadmap on the Russian fossil fuels exit?
Before giving the floor to Anna Kaisa, I think we have already approached this topic last week on Friday. This is not a new topic. The President has mentioned the increased possibility of buying LNG gas from the US. First time I recall is November in Budapest at the margin of the informal UCO at the time. I think it's one of the possibilities on the table that we're looking into, but Anna Kaisa, of course.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, nothing to say. I mean, it has to be seen as Olof several times also mentioned last week that it is now has to be seen in the context of the ongoing tariff situation as well, and therefore we cannot now go into details of what is being discussed. But I mean, kind of taking a step back and then kind of looking at the LNG purchases separately, exactly as Ariana said. I mean, this is something that has been flagged at political level already before. I mean, immediately actually after US elections in November. That we are ready to step up because we have our diversification strategy. We do want to diversify away from Russian LNG, and US is absolutely one of the options.
Thanks. You have a follow-up. Go ahead.
The reason I re-up the question is specifically because of the term facilitate, which goes beyond the political level, and I was wondering whether you had specific mechanisms in mind, like, for example, a rehash of aggregate EU to facilitate an increase in purchasing?
Again, a bit early to go into the details, but kind of globally what could be done. Aggregation, yes. could be one of the options. We have used it for other commodities earlier, and it has proven its worth. It has proven it works. But then, of course, I mean, then we have to see always case by case what are we aggregating and what size companies and whether there's an interest. But I would not go into the mechanics of this now.
Thanks. Question still for Anna-Kaisa? Go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, with the aggregate EU, how would that, first of all, is that part of the negotiations? If you can give any clarity on that, whether that's discussion is part of on the aggregate EU is part of the trade negotiations, and secondly, how would that work to facilitate through the aggregate EU, given that this is commercial terms in principle? If I haven't misunderstood the principle of this facility.
Thanks. I mean, I'll give the floor to Anna-Kaisa, but in general, we won't be conducting negotiations in this press room, as we have also said last week, so we won't be providing details on what is part of them or what not, and also speculating on what could be a potential mechanism that could be eventually considered is not something that we usually really do, but Anna-Kaisa, of course, feel free to.
Yes, absolutely, and it was something that I mentioned as one of the possibilities, because it's something that we already have in place, and I'm again, there's plenty of information about how aggregate EU works and what the principles are available online. We can send you the link. I mean, it would, but before we get there, we need to have a little bit of understanding first at political level, also that how things are moving forward. And again, always now remembering the context in which we are doing this. And I'm really speaking under the control of Olof here, and I would not go into the granular side of energy discussions in any way here.
Is the IMO deal, is that sufficient for the EU to get rid of the fuel-y EU maritime regulation and to shift towards the IMO framework, also in terms of the ETS provisions, in terms of maritime shipping?
On the ETS, what we will do now, obviously, there was a deal on Friday. We also, I mean, now want to see what exactly it means. And the EU ETS Maritime, it will be reviewed with view of what was agreed on Friday. So what we will do now is that we will submit a report to the European Parliament and the Council. And we will have to do this within the 18 months of the adoption of the IMO global measure and before it becomes operational. And this review will take into account the more granular specific items, issues that you also mentioned. So basically the most important is the ambition with view to the Paris Agreement, whether it's aligned, and kind of overall environmental integrity, and then the coherence between EU ETS. But this is now something that we're kicking off because we now have the negotiation. I mean, we have the agreement from Friday, and now we will. The next step will be to provide this report to the co-legislators.
Thanks, Anna-Kaisa. David, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, there was a quick reaction from the NGO Transport and Environment on Friday, saying that it's a bad deal for biofuels for the Amazon forest, and it will promote biofuels. Is that your understanding of the IMO deal, or do you think there are enough safeguards there for biofuels as well?
It's an agreement that we welcome. Does it have everything for everybody? For sure, it doesn't. This is often the case as an outcome from international negotiations, that not everybody gets the most optimal outcome. But at the same time, the process in itself, it's important. It is important that there is ability to have or to agree on anything and to move the agenda forward.